April 8, 1940, began with a bleak northern horizon, and HMS Glowworm advanced through the Norwegian Sea with engines straining against hostile winds. The crew sensed tension rising across the steel decks, and every lookout scanned the misted distance, waiting for movement that might reveal the enemy's hidden presence. The destroyer sliced through heavy swells, and Lieutenant Commander Gerard Roope monitored the shifting weather closely, keeping his officers focused despite rising uncertainty. Orders from higher command remained limited, yet every sailor understood the strategic importance of Norway, and each man prepared silently for imminent confrontation. Fog thickened across the rolling waters, and the ship's hull groaned under relentless waves, creating an ominous backdrop for the unfolding operation. Roope relied on instinct sharpened by years at sea, guiding his vessel through treacherous conditions as radio silence deepened the growing sense of isolation. A sudden contact report shattered the quiet tension, and Glowworm altered course immediately, turning toward what appeared to be an unidentified vessel shadowing the British force. Roope issued sharp commands, maintaining discipline while preparing his crew for the possibility of hostile engagement. In rapidly deteriorating visibility, the destroyer approached cautiously through the swirling mist, and silhouettes flickered uncertainly along the distant horizon, making identification difficult. Roope pressed onward with measured resolve, ensuring his guns remained ready, knowing any delay might allow an adversary to escape or secure an advantageous firing position. Moments later, the shadow resolved into a threat, and Glowworm increased speed, attempting to gain tactical control despite her smaller displacement. Every man understood the imbalance looming ahead, and yet no hesitation spread across the decks, only silent readiness shaped by rigorous naval training. The sea grew more violent with each passing minute, and spray crashed over the bow as the crew steadied themselves against unpredictable gusts. Roope studied the approaching vessel carefully, recognizing the unmistakable outline of a German warship, emerging gradually from the shrouded haze. The encounter escalated rapidly, and Glowworm's engines roared as Roope prepared to engage a far superior opponent, knowing retreat was impossible under wartime orders. The destroyer's speed offered her only advantage, and the crew braced for a confrontation that would soon defy conventional naval expectations. Gun crews assembled without hesitation, and loaders checked ammunition as officers relayed quick updates along the narrow bridge. Every surface trembled with tension, and the destroyer surged forward, driven by determination rather than firepower, as Roope committed fully to the impending clash. The German vessel grew clearer with each rolling swell, and torpedo officers stood ready for Roope's signal, understanding the weapon's crucial role against heavier armor. The atmosphere tightened further, and Glowworm pressed toward imminent danger with resolve born from duty rather than any expectation of victory. The destroyer's bow cut closer through turbulent waters, and Roope absorbed every detail of the looming threat, calculating risks with unyielding precision. His crew relied wholly upon his judgment, trusting his experience even as the situation unfolded into an encounter far beyond conventional tactical balance. As Glowworm closed the final distance, the confrontation scale became undeniable, and Roope prepared for battle against overwhelming odds, recognizing the historical weight gathering upon his small ship. The Norwegian Sea churned violently beneath them, framing a moment destined to echo across wartime naval memory. Gerard Roope entered naval service during an era defined by rigid discipline, and his early career shaped an unwavering sense of responsibility that guided every future decision. He absorbed traditions built over centuries, understanding that duty demanded personal sacrifice, especially when confronting dangers that exceeded any single officer's control. His training emphasized precision and composure, and Roope embraced both qualities wholeheartedly, allowing them to anchor his leadership style during moments of intense pressure. Senior officers recognized his calm resolve, and younger sailors admired the quiet steadiness that distinguished him from commanders, who relied more upon authority than example. Years at sea refined Roope's instincts, and every deployment added layers of experience that shaped his approach to sudden crisis. He learned to read the weather, interpret subtle shifts in enemy behavior, and maintain strict discipline aboard ships where routine order often determined whether chaos could be contained. By 1940, he served with seasoned confidence, and yet he carried an awareness of Britain's precarious strategic situation, knowing Germany's naval modernization presented unprecedented challenges. His assignment aboard HMS Glowworm reflected both trust in his abilities and the reality that even skilled, Commanders faced missions bordering on impossible. Glowworm herself was aging, and Roope understood the limitations inherent in handling a smaller destroyer against a formidable adversary, especially across harsh northern seas. Still, he cultivated unity among his crew, strengthening morale through unwavering commitment rather than grand speeches or displays of rigid authoritarian behavior. His leadership style blended tradition with modern awareness, and he balanced strict naval protocol with human understanding, recognizing that wartime strain required empathy as much as commands. Roope believed officers carried responsibility not merely for operational success but also for the emotional endurance of every sailor under their charge. Though shaped by older doctrines, Roope never mistook tradition for inflexibility, and he approached every tactical scenario with a willingness to adapt when circumstances shifted beyond established expectations. This rare combination of discipline and thoughtfulness would eventually influence decisions that defied conventional manuals during Glowworm's final engagement. Long before Norway, colleagues noted his tendency to evaluate extreme situations without panic, and such qualities became essential as Europe descended deeper into conflict. The Admiralty valued steady hands during uncertainty, and Roope repeatedly demonstrated capability in balancing swift action with deliberate assessment of rapidly evolving threats. His sense of duty extended beyond personal ambition, and he regarded command as a burden requiring continuous vigilance, especially within contested waters where smaller ships faced increasing peril. Every sailing reinforced his awareness that survival depended upon both careful preparation and courage to act decisively when alternatives vanished. Glowworm's mission in early April placed Roope at the edge of strategic necessity, and he accepted the task without hesitation, fully comprehending the risks embedded within its directives. He relied upon preparation shaped over decades, trusting that discipline might offset disadvantages inherent in confronting technologically superior forces. As events moved toward inevitable conflict, Roope drew upon every element of his training, embracing the solemn traditions that defined British naval heritage even as he acknowledged their limitations. The weight of command rested heavily, yet his determination remained constant, forming the foundation for choices that would later astonish both navies. In the hours before confrontation, Roope carried himself with characteristic steadiness, masking inner tension with disciplined composure that reassured his men despite gathering uncertainty. His trajectory from dutiful cadet to commanding officer revealed a life molded by principle, preparing him unknowingly for the extraordinary moment soon approaching across the Norwegian Sea. Admiral Hipper embodied Germany's evolving naval doctrine, and the heavy cruiser represented a fusion of firepower, armor, and precision engineered for dominance across contested northern waters. Her designers intended to challenge enemy fleets efficiently, relying on modern technology and strategic speed rather than outdated theories inherited from earlier maritime eras. Commissioned during a period of rapid militarization, the cruiser emerged as a symbol of Germany's determination to reclaim influence upon Europe's oceans, reflecting ambitions shaped by lessons from the previous war. Her presence projected calculated strength, and each mission reinforced the growing confidence held by the Kriegsmarine's command structure. Admiral Hipper carried formidable weaponry, and her main batteries offered destructive range unmatched by smaller vessels operating west of Norway, granting decisive tactical advantages during engagements. Her armor plating absorbed significant punishment, enabling her to outlast opponents unable to deliver equivalent strikes or withstand prolonged exchanges under heavy fire. Every officer aboard understood Germany's operational expectations, and the ship's crew trained relentlessly to maintain seamless coordination between gunnery, navigation, and reconnaissance teams. This discipline reflected broader naval doctrine emphasizing precision, unity, and aggressive maneuvering, aiming to overwhelm adversaries through superior control rather than reckless confrontation alone. The cruiser represented a modern shift in German strategy, and planners envisioned her as an instrument capable of regulating sea lanes, essential to sustaining broader wartime objectives. Her operations frequently supported larger campaigns, reinforcing Germany's ability to apply pressure rapidly along vulnerable northern approaches where Allied presence weakened. Admiral Hipper's command team operated with heightened confidence, and they relied upon advanced optical systems and efficient communication networks that enhanced situational awareness during unpredictable encounters. This technological integration offered decisive advantages, especially in harsh weather where visibility faltered and rapid analysis determined the outcome of fleeting opportunities. The Norwegian Sea held strategic value, and Germany's naval doctrine emphasized swift intervention to secure dominance before Allied forces could solidify defensive footholds. Admiral Hipper frequently patrolled these turbulent waters, embodying Germany's belief that bold maritime actions could reshape the broader conflict's trajectory during its early months. Despite her formidable strength, the cruiser's design prioritized calculated engagements rather than unnecessary risks, reflecting doctrine focused on preserving capital assets for sustained operations. Commanders were encouraged to exploit overwhelming superiority whenever possible, minimizing exposure to unpredictable threats capable of undermining Germany's growing maritime confidence. When Admiral Hipper encountered British vessels, her officers' expectations followed doctrine shaped by technological advantage, assuming smaller ships would retreat or be neutralized efficiently. This mindset framed the psychological landscape preceding Glowworm's improbable challenge, a confrontation far beyond typical scenarios anticipated by German strategic planners. The cruiser's operational logs emphasized structured decision-making, and officers meticulously followed established procedures intended to maintain control during sudden engagements. Every action aboard reinforced the belief that Germany's modern navy had surpassed opponents still relying on older ships or doctrines unsuited for mechanized warfare. Admiral Hipper's efficiency depended on cohesive teamwork, and years of rigorous preparation fostered a crew capable of responding instantly to emerging threats, whether surface targets or environmental hazards. Their confidence reflected the Kriegsmarine's conviction that superiority in design and training ensured predictable outcomes during most encounters. On April 8, 1940, the cruiser advanced through heavy seas with expectations grounded in doctrine, unaware that an encounter imminent upon the horizon would challenge assumptions regarding discipline, resolve, and courage. The meeting awaiting Admiral Hipper involved circumstances no manual anticipated, reshaping perceptions on both sides of the conflict. Glowworm pushed through storm-laden waters, and the first distant silhouette appeared suddenly through drifting fog, creating an atmosphere thick with uncertainty as tension rippled across the destroyer's narrow decks. Roope recognized immediately that the encounter carried significance, and he prepared his men for a confrontation far beyond conventional expectations. The small destroyer advanced cautiously, and every lookout strained to identify the unknown vessel's outline, watching shadows merge with heaving waves. Visibility shifted unpredictably, and Glowworm's crew sensed an approaching threat, feeling the weight of an encounter that demanded vigilance despite the destroyer's limited strength. Moments later, the haze thinned, and the looming bulk of a German escort appeared, prompting Roope to maneuver decisively as gun crews rushed into position with trained efficiency. The destroyer's engines surged, and discipline shaped every action taken aboard a ship facing an opponent already outmatching her capabilities. A brief exchange confirmed hostility, and Glowworm engaged without hesitation, firing rapidly despite pounding waves that disrupted aim and visibility. Roope understood this initial opponent was not the principal danger, yet he pressed forward, determined to neutralize immediate threats while preparing for whatever larger presence might emerge behind the mist. The German vessel attempted evasive action, and Glowworm's gunners responded quickly, sending bursts across the turbulent sea as Roope assessed the shifting situation. The battle intensified momentarily, and each decision carried urgency, revealing the delicate balance between aggressive pursuit and the fragile durability of Glowworm's hull. After a tense sequence of maneuvers, the escort disengaged into the fog, leaving Glowworm momentarily alone upon the restless waters. Roope recognized the retreat carried implications, suggesting a larger warship might lurk nearby, concealed deliberately by the escort's involvement and the surrounding storm. The destroyer cut forward again, engines straining as wind rolled across the decks and the horizon darkened with approaching danger. Every officer felt the shift in atmosphere, sensing a presence too immense to remain hidden much longer, as though the sea itself anticipated what would emerge. Gradually an immense silhouette materialized, and Glowworm confronted the unmistakable outline of Admiral Hipper, towering above the waves with calm menace. The size disparity became instantly clear, revealing a confrontation neither balanced nor expected by naval doctrine, yet inevitable under wartime conditions surrounding the Norwegian coast. The cruiser advanced deliberately, and her imposing hull contrasted sharply with Glowworm's smaller frame, emphasizing the tactical disadvantage Roope willingly accepted. The destroyer maintained position nonetheless, embodying resolve shaped by responsibility rather than confidence, as crew members steadied themselves for an unprecedented engagement. Gunfire erupted suddenly, and Admiral Hipper's opening salvo sent towering plumes of water skyward, demonstrating overwhelming superiority before Glowworm could fully react. Roope maneuvered swiftly, employing tight turns to complicate enemy targeting despite limited space, relying upon speed rather than armor for survival. Glowworm responded with determined fire, and her guns roared despite violent pitching that challenged accuracy at every moment. Crew members worked with disciplined urgency, channeling training into action as they confronted a foe built expressly to dominate open sea engagements through vast firepower and reinforced structural design. As the first minutes unfolded, the encounter transformed into a struggle between agility and monumental strength, pushing Glowworm beyond intended capability while revealing the spirit driving her crew. The destroyer pressed closer despite escalating danger, initiating a clash destined to redefine perceptions of courage against overwhelming odds. Glowworm closed the distance under relentless fire, and Roope ordered the first torpedo spread launched with calculated precision, hoping speed and surprise might offset the cruiser's overwhelming advantage. The weapons streaked through turbulent water, yet shifting waves and evasive maneuvers caused each warhead to miss its intended target entirely. The failure left the destroyer exposed, and Admiral Hipper intensified her barrage, sending shells that crashed dangerously close along Glowworm's trembling hull. Roope maintained composure despite rising chaos, guiding his damaged ship through violent swells while searching for any fleeting opportunity to regain tactical control. Gun crews attempted continued fire, and each blast echoed across the storm-beaten sea, yet mounting damage gradually crippled Glowworm's limited armament. The German cruiser's accuracy improved steadily, and one devastating hit silenced the forward guns completely, leaving the destroyer with rapidly diminishing offensive capability against an unrelenting opponent. Smoke drifted across the decks and crew members fought to contain spreading fires, working tirelessly despite choking fumes and erupting blast fragments. Roope understood the situation had become critical, and he evaluated remaining options while recognizing that modern doctrine offered no practical solution against such dominant firepower. Another salvo struck with brutal force, and Glowworm shuddered violently, scattering debris across soaked steel as internal systems failed one after another. Communication lines faltered, and officers shouted orders through rising noise, striving to maintain cohesion as structural integrity weakened under the continuous assault. Amid the destruction, torpedo crews prepared a final desperate attempt, yet the cruiser's speed and maneuvering rendered an effective shot nearly impossible. Roope saw the gap widening, and tactical calculations confirmed the harsh reality that Glowworm could not strike decisively through conventional means any longer. The destroyer's remaining guns fired sporadically, and each round carried the determination of men refusing surrender despite overwhelming adversity. Yet the imbalance grew unmistakable, and Roope recognized that modern naval combat, dominated by armor and artillery, had cornered his ship into an untenable position. Explosions carved deeper wounds into the hull, and sections of the deck buckled under repeated impacts, making movement hazardous for sailors rushing to assist wounded comrades. Glowworm labored heavily in the water, and her engines strained against mounting damage that threatened to end propulsion entirely. Spray mixed with drifting smoke, creating a disorienting veil as officers attempted to maintain visibility amid thickening haze. Roope considered withdrawal briefly, yet operational duty and encircled conditions made escape impossible, forcing him to confront the grim truth that survival no longer depended on conventional tactics. The crew fought on with unwavering discipline, and their resolve persisted despite diminishing equipment and collapsing defenses. Roope knew the ship's spirit remained unbroken, but tactics built for modern warfare had failed them entirely, leaving no remaining advantage except determination and proximity to the enemy. As another heavy barrage struck, Glowworm's guns fell silent definitively, extinguishing the last element of standard offensive power. Roope assessed the battered vessel around him, understanding that every modern option had been exhausted, and that survival required a choice completely outside established naval doctrine. Amid raging seas and unending fire, Roope steadied himself for a decision forged from desperation and courage, recognizing that only an ancient tactic long dismissed as obsolete remained within reach. Glowworm turned through crashing waves toward destiny, preparing for a maneuver daring enough to challenge the overwhelming strength before her. Rain and spray swept violently across the shattered decks, and Roope realized the moment for conventional action had passed entirely, leaving no remaining avenue except one rooted deeper than any modern doctrine. He recognized that survival required audacity, and his mind turned toward a tactic considered hopelessly archaic by contemporary naval standards. Glowworm staggered under continuous fire, and the crew braced themselves instinctively as Roope issued the order that stunned even seasoned officers observing the unfolding chaos. He commanded a hard turn toward the enemy, directing the crippled destroyer straight at Admiral Hipper with unwavering finality. The helm responded sluggishly, and strained machinery groaned as Glowworm fought to align her battered hull with the advancing cruiser. Roope remained composed despite the unfolding desperation, and every man aboard understood instantly that their commander had chosen the most perilous path imaginable under the circumstances. Ramming had vanished from modern manuals, and naval training dismissed it as reckless. Yet Roope recognized that Glowworm's only remaining strength lay within momentum and proximity. With guns silenced and torpedoes spent, the destroyer's steel frame became the last weapon available against overwhelming superiority. The decision carried profound weight, and officers exchanged glances filled with disbelief, admiration, and solemn acceptance as the ship committed fully to the accelerating charge. Roope's leadership radiated through the chaos, offering clarity amid destruction as Glowworm advanced toward the towering enemy hull. Wind surged across the bridge, and spray lashed against shattered windows while the destroyer pushed through violent seas, closing distance with astonishing resolve. Roope kept his gaze fixed on Admiral Hipper's looming flank, calculating angles with disciplined precision forged through years of unyielding service. The German cruiser recognized the maneuver too late, and her gun crews intensified fire in frantic response, attempting to disrupt Glowworm's approach before impact. Shells erupted around the destroyer, yet Roope refused to alter course, trusting momentum to carry his ship through the final critical meters. Glowworm's crew clung to rails and bulkheads as the ship lurched forward, driven now more by willpower than functioning machinery. Despite fires, flooding, and structural collapse, the destroyer held her trajectory with stubborn tenacity, embodying the courage Roope demanded through his bold command. Each second compressed into a moment of heightened awareness, and the men understood they participated in an act certain to be remembered, far beyond standard wartime engagements. The choice defied doctrine, yet its necessity became undeniable, revealing a commander unwilling to surrender dignity despite impossible odds. Roope's calm demeanor steadied the bridge, and he continued issuing measured instructions as the distance narrowed rapidly. The destroyer's bow rose and fell with the swelling sea, aligning perfectly with the cruiser's vulnerable side as the moment of collision approached with unstoppable certainty. The air thickened with anticipation, and every heartbeat accelerated as Glowworm surged toward destiny, carrying the weight of duty, desperation, and unbreakable resolve. Roope understood that history often favored those who acted decisively when logic failed, and his crew embraced that truth without hesitation. As Glowworm raced forward, Roope's decision illuminated the very essence of naval courage, rejecting calculated survival for an act rooted in honor and fierce determination. The destroyer hurtled toward the enemy cruiser, prepared to strike with the only force remaining, marking a moment destined to transcend conventional warfare's limits. Glowworm slammed toward Admiral Hipper with unstoppable momentum, and the final seconds compressed into a blur of noise and rising tension. The destroyer's bow lifted sharply as sea spray blasted across the bridge, and every sailor felt history tightening around them with unmistakable weight. Roope stood firm as the cruiser's massive hull expanded across his field of view, and he monitored alignment with practiced precision. The violent sea pitched beneath Glowworm, yet the destroyer held her course, and the crew braced for the collision, certain to reshape their fate permanently. Impact erupted with thunderous force as Glowworm's bow tore into Admiral Hipper's armored side, and steel screamed across churning water. The shockwave hurled men from their positions, and echoes ricocheted across the Norwegian Sea, marking a moment no observer could ever forget. The destroyer's forward structure crumpled instantly, yet momentum drove her deeper into the cruiser, and plates buckled beneath the unexpected assault. German sailors witnessed the impossible scene unfolding below, and officers struggled to comprehend a tactic abandoned long before mechanized warfare established new expectations. Photographs captured aboard Admiral Hipper recorded the shocking moment, and images showed Glowworm's shattered bow pressed violently against the cruiser's flank. These rare frames preserved an event defying conventional doctrine, and they later offered undeniable proof of Roope's extraordinary final decision under overwhelming pressure. The collision severed critical sections of the cruiser's hull, and water surged through ruptured compartments despite extensive internal protection. Admiral Hipper reeled under the blow, and officers scrambled to contain flooding, realizing too late that the destroyer's sacrifice had inflicted unexpected structural damage. Glowworm recoiled from the impact with devastating injuries, and fires erupted across fractured decks as seawater poured through widening gaps. Roope steadied himself amid falling debris, and he issued final commands with unwavering clarity, determined to preserve what remained of his crew. The sea churned violently around the entangled ships, and smoke veiled the horizon while both sides struggled to regain control amid chaos. Sailors clung to rails as the destroyer drifted backward, carrying scars carved during a strike no manual could have predicted. German officers watched Glowworm stagger in the water, and many acknowledged the fierce courage displayed by a ship drastically outmatched. Their astonishment reflected genuine respect, and the collision forced them to confront realities surpassing calculations, based solely on firepower and technological advantage. Glowworm's damage grew catastrophic, and flames spread faster than surviving crew members could contain them, despite desperate effort and unwavering discipline. Roope surveyed the wreckage surrounding him, accepting the destroyer's fate while ensuring his men received every possible chance to abandon ship safely. Admiral Hipper stabilized gradually, yet officers remained shaken by the unprecedented attack launched by a vessel considered too small to challenge such displacement. Their shock mirrored that carried by Glowworm's survivors, who witnessed the result of their commander's daring choice amid impossible conditions. As the destroyer listed heavily, the collision's reverberations continued echoing across both ships, forcing every witness to acknowledge its historical significance. Glowworm drifted toward her final moments, carrying evidence of a strike immortalized through photographs, testimony, and memories destined to endure far beyond that violent northern sea. Glowworm rolled heavily as seawater surged through shattered compartments, and Roope gave the order to abandon ship with steady resolve despite rising chaos. The freezing Norwegian Sea waited mercilessly below, and sailors leapt into violent waters, knowing survival depended upon minutes rather than hours in the numbing cold. Debris drifted across the surface as men struggled to stay afloat, their breaths shortening rapidly while waves battered their exhausted bodies. The destroyer's final moments unfolded behind them, and smoke mingled with icy spray as Glowworm slipped deeper, surrendering completely to the sea's crushing pull. Roope remained aboard until the last possible moment, ensuring evacuation proceeded with maximum order before finally entering the freezing water himself. His presence among the survivors became a source of strength, and men clung to rafts or wreckage while bitter winds stripped away precious warmth. Admiral Hipper slowed cautiously nearby, and German officers observed the wreckage scattered across the waves, fully aware the British crew faced imminent death without immediate assistance. Despite ongoing wartime hostility, the cruiser's captain recognized the human cost unfolding around him, prompting a decision shaped by honor rather than doctrine. Orders were issued to deploy rescue teams, and German sailors worked swiftly to haul survivors aboard despite frigid conditions threatening to overwhelm their efforts. They extended ropes into turbulent swells, reaching for struggling men whose strength faltered as hypothermia tightened its grip relentlessly. Roope, barely conscious, was brought aboard the cruiser after repeated attempts, and German crew members treated him with unexpected respect given the recent collision. His courage in ramming their ship resonated deeply, leaving many astonished that a commander would risk everything to strike such a blow. Survivors were guided toward warmth, and German medical staff worked methodically to revive freezing British sailors suffering from shock and exposure. The atmosphere aboard Admiral Hipper carried tension mixed with admiration, reflecting an encounter that had surpassed conventional wartime hostility and entered a realm defined by shared humanity. The German captain, Helmuth High, sought out Roope personally, acknowledging the extraordinary bravery displayed during the engagement. Their brief exchange remained solemn and respectful, representing a rare moment where enemies recognized each other's sacrifice despite conflicting national commands guiding their actions. As the rescued sailors recovered, German crew members whispered among themselves, discussing the incredible decision that had driven a destroyer into a cruiser's armored side. The gesture stunned them, and many struggled to reconcile Glowworm's courage with the cold calculations usually governing naval warfare. Roope's condition deteriorated despite rescue efforts, and he succumbed to injuries sustained during the battle, leaving survivors devastated by the loss of their steadfast commander. His final hours aboard the enemy cruiser deepened the encounter's emotional resonance, forging a memory impossible for either side to forget. German officers observed a moment of quiet respect, acknowledging the magnitude of Roope's sacrifice while their ship continued stabilizing from the collision's damage. The event altered perceptions aboard Admiral Hipper, revealing that valor could emerge even from opponents confronting overwhelming odds. Amid freezing winds and restless waves, the aftermath etched a human narrative beyond strategy or weaponry, demonstrating compassion's presence within brutal conflict. The survivors' rescue and Roope's final moments created an unexpected bridge between adversaries, shaping an episode destined to endure within wartime memory long after the sea reclaimed its calm. The aftermath aboard Admiral Hipper carried an unusual solemnity, and Captain Helmut High found himself reflecting deeply upon Roope's final decision, recognizing a level of valor that transcended national allegiance. He understood such courage demanded preservation, and he resolved to ensure the British commander's actions would not vanish within wartime obscurity. German officers prepared detailed reports describing the engagement, and High shaped his testimony with careful precision, determined to portray Glowworm's sacrifice accurately despite political pressures. His account emphasized Roope's unbroken resolve, documenting each moment leading toward the ramming strike that defied conventional expectations while demonstrating extraordinary dedication under catastrophic circumstances. High's written statements traveled eventually across formal channels, and he insisted they remain unaltered despite potential controversy within the Kriegsmarine hierarchy. His steadfast commitment to honesty reflected traditional naval ideals, suggesting truth possessed value beyond propaganda, particularly when acknowledging an opponent who embodied courage rarely witnessed during mechanized warfare. The captain communicated Glowworm's final maneuver clearly, explaining how Roope maintained composure throughout escalating destruction, refusing to surrender even after weapons failed and structural integrity collapsed. High supported this testimony with witness accounts, ensuring the British commander's intention remained fully understood rather than misinterpreted as reckless desperation devoid of disciplined reasoning. German sailors contributed additional descriptions, recounting the impact's stunning force and the unwavering determination visible upon Glowworm's bridge moments before collision. High integrated these observations carefully, shaping a narrative that preserved both technical accuracy and emotional truth, demonstrating respect for adversaries who fought with honorable conviction despite overwhelming disadvantage. As documentation progressed, High contemplated the broader implications of his testimony, recognizing it might one day influence foreign assessments regarding British naval conduct. Yet he persisted, believing fairness stood essential even within conflict, particularly when evaluating actions reflecting principles long shared across maritime traditions spanning rival nations. His testimony eventually reached channels capable of preserving it for post-war evaluation, and High trusted that Britain might learn of Roope's courage despite limited communication under ongoing hostilities. The act carried personal risk, yet he considered acknowledgement of bravery an obligation rather than courtesy, shaped by centuries of naval custom. Discussions aboard Admiral Hipper reflected the gravity of High's decision, and officers debated whether wartime authorities would accept reports praising an enemy commander. Nonetheless, they recognized the authenticity within the captain's statements, supporting his efforts to ensure Roope's conduct remained faithfully recorded for future examination. High's documentation highlighted features often lost amid strategic analysis, revealing how Glowworm's charge embodied spirit rather than desperation, transforming an outmatched destroyer into a symbol of defiance. He affirmed this interpretation repeatedly, refusing to let bureaucratic edits dilute the significance embedded within Roope's final command decision. The captain's commitment became a rare gesture, bridging two opposing navies during one of history's most turbulent conflicts, offering testimony that transcended national animosities. His words conveyed reverence for human fortitude, asserting that courage demanded recognition even when displayed by those fighting beneath another flag. As the war continued, High remained aware that his testimony might not surface immediately, Yet he felt confident its preservation carried enduring importance. He believed truth possessed lasting weight, capable of honoring sacrifice long after temporary hostilities ceased influencing political judgment across divided nations. Through this act, the story of Glowworm's final moments gained a guardian within the very ship she rammed, establishing a bond forged through respect rather than alliance. High's testimony ensured Roope's legacy survived, safeguarded across enemy lines until the world could acknowledge the extraordinary nature of his final stand. Glowworm's legacy endured far beyond her brief, violent engagement, and the destroyer's name became synonymous with courage born from desperation, defiance, and calculated audacity. Naval historians recognize the ramming maneuver as both reckless and brilliant, demonstrating that a single commander's resolve could influence perception across entire fleets and nations. Lieutenant Commander Roope's actions inspired official recognition, and posthumous honors reflected the profound weight of his final decision against overwhelming odds. His story illustrated the delicate line between bravery and apparent madness, revealing that courage sometimes required defiance of doctrine, convention, and even self-preservation for a greater strategic or moral purpose. Naval manuals were reviewed in the years following the incident, and discussions debated whether ramming, long dismissed, retained occasional tactical relevance. Officers cited Glowworm as a case study in unconventional warfare, emphasizing that adaptability and audacity could occasionally succeed where firepower, armor, and technology alone proved insufficient to achieve results. Survivors recounted their experiences with vivid clarity, and testimonies preserved the emotional truth alongside tactical analysis. The crew's recollections underscored Roope's calm authority under extreme pressure, revealing a leader capable of making historically consequential decisions while maintaining human dignity and instilling courage among those facing mortal danger. The engagement altered enemy perception as well, and German officers acknowledged the extraordinary impact of Glowworm's maneuver. Admiral Hipper's personnel recorded the event as a defining encounter, demonstrating that valor could emerge even in opponents whose defeat seemed certain, forcing strategic minds to reconsider the psychological dimension of naval conflict. Public and military awareness of the incident grew slowly, and photographs, eyewitness reports, and official records collectively shaped the narrative that would eventually influence naval training. Glowworm's final act was studied for its moral and tactical significance, illustrating the enduring tension between standard operating procedures and extraordinary battlefield choices. Roope's death aboard Admiral Hipper added profound solemnity to the legacy, and narratives emphasized that heroism often carried ultimate personal cost. His willingness to confront the impossible without hesitation became a symbol of leadership, illustrating that decisive action often transcends the predictability of manuals or the comfort of calculated survival. Historical accounts highlighted the uniqueness of the encounter, noting that few destroyers, particularly in such overwhelming circumstances, could inspire recognition from both sides of the conflict. Glowworm's engagement became a testament to the human capacity for determination, ingenuity, and sacrifice when conventional strategies falter under extreme pressure. The story influenced training programs subtly, encouraging officers to cultivate initiative and moral courage, even when standard doctrines offered no satisfactory solutions. Glowworm became a case study in leadership literature, exemplifying how the calculated acceptance of risk could produce extraordinary outcomes despite physical and technological disadvantages. Cultural memory preserved the event in both Britain and Germany, reflecting universal respect for bravery and tactical audacity. High's testimony contributed to an enduring narrative where adversaries acknowledged valor, transforming what might have been a tragic defeat into a story of mutual recognition and historical resonance across national lines. Museums and naval archives highlighted Glowworm's final engagement, providing tangible artifacts and documents that illustrated the collision's human and mechanical dimensions. The story emphasized that memory serves not only to preserve technical history but also to honor the courage, foresight, and ultimate sacrifice that define extraordinary moments at sea. Ultimately, Glowworm's legacy persisted as a symbol of the extraordinary choices demanded in warfare, demonstrating that courage can redefine expectations and reshape collective understanding. Roope's decision and its consequences endure in naval memory, reminding generations that audacity, discipline, and moral resolve can achieve lasting influence far beyond the confines of conventional strategy.